Hi, everyone.
Hey, Musa.
So Musa and Benjamin, the first presenter is here, Kate Slevin, and we were in touch with Brian Fritsch earlier, so I know it's on his radar. If you want to wait a minute for a few more people, that's
Yeah,
fine. Just let me know and I'll hit record.
thanks. I'll probably start at 6:33.
I like that. 6 minus 3 equals 3.
Have we always been using WebEx, by the way?
Uh-huh.
No. Okay.
Everybody nods sadly. It's the one that the city gives us for free. Everything else would be money out of the old budget.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the platform we have, not the one we deserve, right? I mean, so.
All right, we'll give it about just one more minute, and then we'll get going. All right. Shawn, you want to get going on the recording? Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the February 5th Transportation Committee meeting of CB14. My name is Musa, co-chair, along with my other co-chair, Benjamin Bendet. We are gathered here to hear from at least two speakers, I think maybe three by the end of the meeting. First, we're going to hear from Kate Slevin, who is the Executive Vice President of the Regional Plan Association, for an introductory presentation. Kate, are you able to kick us off?
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Give me a second. I'm just trying to find my presentation.
Sure,
And
no
then
worries.
I'll get going. Just give me 1 minute.
All good.
Hello. Thank you for getting me the link.
Hi, Nina. I hope everyone's been recovering through the snow and all that. No one had to shovel out too many cars and then reshovel out themselves after the plows came through. And then maybe one more time.
While we're waiting for the presentation to come up, there's a film shoot in the community, and I was a little bit annoyed because the competition for space, and we thought it might get delayed, and people are apoplectic about it. But turns out film crews do a lot of shoveling so that they can fit their trucks in. So one day of a film shoot is going to be the rest of the week snow free.
Oh, cool.
So if anybody has a movie they want to make, I've got a few blocks for you.
I think somewhere on my street they were filming like SVU episode or something last year.
SVU's been in the neighborhood. This one's FBI.
Yeah. I know it's not it's not like Emily in Paris is coming or something.
They were Flatbush wouldn't believe that.
No, I know. Imagine.
They'd be like, "Who are you?"
Emily
I'll be right back. I just have to reload my screen. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna
All right,
exiting.
Kate.
Yeah. Sorry.
Would love to see the film crews somehow magically get around to all the crosswalk intersection corners because some are so much better than others, and even the good ones are
Yeah.
kind of tough.
Yeah, I agree. Agree.
Yeah, so Sean, does this mean that for the filming crew, we gotta put in a ticket to 311 to thank Haddads or whoever they are for plowing whatever street they were doing for the film shoot, or we're not taking that there.
I will say the one of the benefits of having a film crew come through, there was a building, again, not that far from where I'm currently at. They had scaffolding up for years and years and years, and it disappeared one day. And it was one of those things where it was there for so long, it became like a marker in the street, how you knew to get around. And I was kind of thrown off one day. I'm like, oh, I think they finally took this down. And the next day, I saw a filming crew come through. I'm like, oh, okay. I see. I understand. You needed it down for the filming. It hasn't gone back up, so it worked. But any word, Kate, on progress? I know you just joined back. I know your time is tight, so I want to make sure we get to you. Hearing none.
I did see her pop up, so I think she's probably working on things.
No. And I see Britt also is not here yet. Okay.
I should be good now.
Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I had to reload my screen and get everything all set up. Thanks for having me tonight. I
Welcome.
appreciate you having us. So I have like a little presentation, just a little bit about what RPA does, and then about some of our transportation priorities, including the IBX.
Mhm.
So I thought I'd start with that. Does that sound
Okay.
good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, can you see?
Yes.
Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then I'm not very familiar with WebEx. Like, can you see me? Let me see how I get to it.
I can.
Can
We
you?
can see. We can see you,
Okay.
and we can see your slides. We can.
Okay. Great.
Good.
All right. Great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm just going to go through a little bit about RPA and about our work, and here we go. So we are actually. Let me start from. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are a very old nonprofit organization. We have been around over 100 years, and we essentially work to improve the quality of life for the entire New York City metro area, which is seen here. It's a region of 23 million residents and 782 municipalities, of which New York City is just one of them. And our work covers a lot of topic areas. We talk about transportation and housing and neighborhood planning, energy and the environment, and governance. And essentially, what we do is we conduct research, planning, and advocacy work. So we essentially, really analyze and look into policy ideas and project ideas, and then we put out proposals for what we think the region needs, and we work with tons of stakeholders and other organizations and many community-based organizations across the region to do this work. And then we have a whole team that goes and tries to implement our work. So we have an advocacy team, and then we have leads in each of the states that we work in. And over the course of our history, we've been involved in a lot of big discussions and made a big impact on the sort of built environment of the New York City metro area. Everything from whether bridges are bridges or tunnels to open space preservation to the creation of public parks. We've been involved in many things over the years. So every generation or so, we actually put out a regional plan. That's where we got our name. And our most recent regional plan was put out in 2017, and it had about 61 recommendations for how we think the region should grow and develop and prosper. And we have all of our work is grounded in values of sustainability, equity, health, and prosperity for all. So we're a pretty small staff. We kind of punch above our weight. We're urban planners and designers and researchers and advocates, communications professionals, and we all come together to do this work. We have a very large board of directors, which is very influential in helping us get the word out about what we're trying to do, and also advises us and gives us strategic advice and ideas and guidance. And then in each of our states, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, we have state directors that are kind of the on the ground folks, and they're often in the state capitals, and they help to advance our work. We've done a lot in Brooklyn specifically. I actually looked on our web to see how much we had done in like Flatbush and Dimmers Park and CB14, and we've done a little bit, but I got a ton of stuff that I thought you might be interested in for Brooklyn overall. The map on the left is one we put out a number of years ago when we were doing our 4th regional plan, and the red bus routes are some of the slowest buses in the city. And that was a while ago, but I probably guess, it hasn't changed too much. And then the right is some work we did in comprehensive planning with Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso's office just recently. And we helped him sort of look at some basic statistics about Brooklyn. And this is one that shows life expectancy for various neighborhoods in the borough. So, we often put out reports, and those 2 maps are examples of things we put into our reports to help illustrate what we're talking about and help people, use data that we produce to reach their goals. We also have a series of sort of advocacy priorities that we advance. And these are some of our regional priorities. And I don't want to get too detailed into some of these because it's probably more than you all want to talk about tonight, but just to give you a little bit of a sense of the work we do. So our regional priorities this year is to sort of resist federal overreach and backsliding on some of our key energy and transit projects. This includes attacks on congestion pricing, various offshore wind projects, and the Gateway Tunnel, which is the new tunnel between New York and New Jersey that is currently under construction. And it'll serve the entire, Northeast corridor of Amtrak. But as of tomorrow, because the federal government hasn't released funding, that project will come to a halt. And all of the workers there have to pack up and go home, and they don't know when they'll be able to come back to the site. And those are, good paying jobs and really good jobs for our region. So it's a travesty near term for the people on the job site, and a travesty long term for sort of our ability to get around and for the region's economic competitiveness. We also have done a ton of work around housing affordability and promoting new housing in the right places. We aren't a group that just promotes housing generally. We want it to go in places that are near transit, where people can be active and walk, and they can be, get around by walking and biking. And we also want people to have good access to jobs. We've advanced a series of public transit projects that improve commutes. I mentioned the Gateway program. I'm going to talk about the IBX, and then a series around Penn Station. And we worked recently to really integrate health equity into urban planning, and make sure that we're intentional in talking about kind of the racist history of the urban planning profession and how America and our, and the city and the entire region has grown and developed. So just to give you a sense of some of our advocacy priorities this year, we have been very supportive of a series of proposals from Governor Hochul to streamline the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is a law that was passed over 50 years ago. And it's very well intentioned. It's meant to measure the environmental impacts of projects. However, because it's old, it needs just some basic reforms to allow certain projects to move forward more quickly. So I think it's most relevant to housing, and especially housing outside of New York City, where there's been many cases where this environmental law has sort of held back projects that are good for the environment because they're in the right places, and but because of some opposition or from one or two people, or just some other sort of uncertainty, that local communities haven't been able to advance a housing proposal that they wanted fast enough. So that's just one thing we're looking at this year. We're very supportive of better and more affordable buses, not only in New York City, but across the state. And there's going to be a lot of chatter about that, I know, in coming months with the new mayor. Very excited to see how that goes. And to keep the offshore wind projects going, Empire Wind and Sunrise Wind specifically. In the city, we're going to continue working on the Interborough Express, and I'm going to talk about that, as I said. We've been putting out some ideas to raise more revenue for NYCHA's capital needs. And we've done some research in sort of affordable home ownership opportunities. So that's home ownership opportunities for lower income or moderate income households, which we just don't have enough of in the city. And then various things having to do with sort of long-term resiliency planning and implementing a piece of legislation that was passed in 2019, which was called the Streets Master Plan, which sets some pretty ambitious goals for creation of protected bike lanes and protected bus lanes, but it has not been met. So some of our overarching transportation goals for New York. Basically, we want to provide affordable and reliable mobility for all New Yorkers. This means prioritizing the efficient modes, transit, cycling, and walking, making buses faster and more reliable, fixing the subways, and making commuter rails more accessible. And that means continuing to look at fare policy. And, there's a program now to give discounts on commuter rail fares within the city. And I suspect Brian's going to talk a little bit about their work and the work we support to do more of that. So more New Yorkers have access to commuter rail that goes to their neighborhoods. Create more public space and green the streets and make them less impervious. Part of the reason we have so much flooding when there's a big storm is because there's not a place for the water to be absorbed. And so just continue to push the city and help the city green the streets and make allow the water to have places to go rather than just into the subway. Better connect people to jobs is a huge priority of ours, especially when we're looking at those bigger transit projects, and improved regional connectivity generally. We got a lot of inspiration from other cities. These are just some places that we've been in touch with some of the leaders recently and just really inspired by what they're up to. This is a slow street, low traffic street in London on the left. And they've done a really incredible job in London of creating safer routes for people, of creating faster and much more reliable bus service, and bringing traffic fatalities and injuries down. And they've even done some more controversial things like putting in parking fees for all parking spaces, which I don't really want to talk about tonight, but it's one thing that they are doing. In Barcelona on the right, they've done a lot around public plazas and just creating more open space for people. And I think this is really, relevant for New York, especially for families in New York who often feel like they don't have enough space to gather. And I think, London even has, this just kind of blew my mind. They have a whole blueprint on how to design the city better for families and children. So there's a lot of things to learn from other places. Just some ideas about how this could be applied to CB14. Better bus service along some of your thoroughfares, more bike lanes along certain streets, more and better public space, and Newkirk Plaza in particular is one that comes to mind. Better planning for children and more open school streets, so there's more space for the kids to play and they can get safely to and from school. And then longer term transit projects like the IBX, and better management of freight, and particularly along like Coney Island Avenue and Cortelyou roads. So before I move on, do you all have any questions you want to ask me about that? This is more about the IBX, so I don't know if you have any
I
questions.
appreciate that. I think we'll just hold off on questions till the end, and then people can kind of jump in and answer questions.
Okay, and this is a little weird. I can't see anyone, so it's really like a sort of
Okay. No worries. I'll let you know, and I'll do.
If you're there.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Great. So now I'm going to talk about one project that we feel very close to, which I'm eager to speak with you all about tonight, which is the IBX, which we actually came up with the idea for some years ago and called it the Triborough line. And this is our initial map of the Triborough, and our whole argument was that, one, we needed better transit service for the outer boroughs, and two, we should take advantage of existing infrastructure that we have and existing rights of way that we have. So we put this idea out actually in our regional plan. That was 2 regional plans ago in 1996. And then over the course of like 2018, 2017 to 2019, we did a lot of advocacy and outreach and discussions around the proposal, and we got a lot of support from communities and leaders in Brooklyn. And so the MTA eventually picked up the idea. The head of the MTA, Jana Lieber, is a big supporter, and we collectively all sort of convinced the governor that this was a good thing, and she adopted it, and now she's advancing it. So that's kind of where we are. That's a short history of it. And these are just some of our, for many years, we've talked about how to bring better transit service to the boroughs. From over a decade ago now, one of our reports, which a lot of the recommendations still stand, unfortunately, because some things have improved, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And then these are just some of the events and advocacy we did in 2018 to 2021 to advance the IBX idea. And Latrice Walker, the Assemblywoman, was a wonderful supporter of this idea and actually sponsored a piece of legislation in Albany for the MTA to do a feasibility study. The legislation didn't pass, but it didn't have to, because the MTA then started a feasibility study. And this is a brief history. It sort of started that feasibility study in 2021. The environmental review was directed to be started a year later. They selected a mode of light rail. So they looked at a bunch of different ideas, bus rapid transit, some other ideas. They selected light rail, and then they inserted it into the MTA Capital Program. And it's in the current MTA Capital Program. They started the environmental review last year, and they've done a series of, you probably have heard about it. They've done a series of events and outreach all through Brooklyn and Queens over the past couple years on this. So there'll be a transit line stretching 14 miles, new stations, transfer to 17 subway line, LIR, and the buses. And the initial ridership is even higher than we had initially estimated, which is over 115,000 daily users, which is really, really good for a transit service. The funding, there's some state funding for sort of the design and the planning. And then about half of the capital cost is in the current MTA's construction plan. That plan runs from 2025 to 2029. And then the idea is they'll, once they're done with that, then they'll seek additional funding in the next capital plan to complete the project. And obviously there's, questions about federal funding and how they're going to be able to pursue federal funding now. But even if they, it's sort of not, we don't have a very sympathetic administration right now in DC, but they can still do a lot of the planning and design and initial construction because some of the money is lined up already. And we don't have any light rail transit in New York City. There is some in New Jersey and Jersey City, but it will be new to New York. So that's pretty exciting. It'll be, the MTA is saying there'll be like 5-minute peak frequency and service. So the trains will come every 5 minutes. And the trains will come more frequently than the subway because each train has sort of less capacity than like a subway car would. So that's really exciting, and it'd be a fixed track, 100% designated right away, so it won't interfere with traffic at all. So I'm just going to go through some of this really quickly. We've just been sort of looking at the corridor a little bit, and I think we've been doing this largely because there's been a lot of talk about the IBX, and there's sort of this instinct to treat the entire corridor as this monolithic, uniform place, and it's just not that. It's incredibly diverse. Every station area is different, and so part of the reason we've been doing this is we're really pushing the city and the MTA to think about individual stations and individual places and not go for a big change in all up and down the corridor, right, in terms of land use. And so that's why we started looking at some of these maps and kind of getting a sense of the differences in the corridor. Here you see the transit and walking distance, how far it extends out from the station. And obviously that'll be a little bit tricky because we don't know exactly, where the station's exits and entrances we're going to be, but this will give you gives you a little bit of a sense. The IBX areas are more densely populated than the rest of New York City, but have fewer jobs. I'm sure that's not a surprise to all of you. The change in jobs that's accessible within 45 minutes of the IBX is going to substantially increase with the construction of this project. And so that is really great because it means faster commute times for people, much easier to get to some of the big destinations in Brooklyn and Queens. Race and ethnicity, I mean, you all know this well, the just incredibly vibrant, diverse nature of the corridor. And I think like it's sort of worth looking at how this will actually connect different neighborhoods that have similar ethnic compositions across Brooklyn and Queens, right? So that's kind of cool to think about. And it's very, very diverse in terms of its land use as well. There's some commercial areas, some areas that are, residential mainly. There's some denser, much more high-rise residential areas. So we've been looking at that as well. There's less open space generally along the IBX and vacant land. But the land use mix is kind of comparable to the rest of the city. And we'll be releasing all this publicly in a few months. So, and I'm happy to share these with you later on. I know it's a lot of information. These are sort of potential development sites. There's like a couple reports out there that say, oh, there's, so much capacity for development along the corridor. And, we are very careful about those kinds of discussions because, again, every place is different. And there are certain areas where they've already done rezonings and certain areas that are largely residential. So, it's you have to sort of think about those conversations very, very specifically to a neighborhood. And I think, one thing we did look at is the potential for accessory dwelling units based on some of the city zoning changes that happened last year. And so those are actually included in this map. And much of CB14, that's the yellow, the sort of orangey yellow you see down there, those are accessory dwelling units. So those are the garage apartments, basement apartments, attic apartments that were legalized with the city of Yes a couple years ago, and much of the city, not in the, not everywhere, but in a lot of the city. And without any zoning changes or any additional changes to the local neighborhoods, there's the possibility, like the zoning allows for over 10,000 new homes along the IBX corridor, which is why we are a little bit like, well, I'm not sure we, need huge rezonings or anything until this project is actually built, because there's a lot of capacity now, and you kind of want to see things happen organically, especially in certain neighborhoods. These are some of the housing units. Again, this is the as of right housing that could be built in certain areas just under existing zoning. In our, again, neighborhood planning has added a lot of housing units to a lot of different parts of the city. These are some of the recent citywide rezonings, and you can see some of them, like the Long Island City rezoning had over 16,000 units that could be added. And, throughout the city, there's sort of been this intention to deal with the housing crisis because there's a lack of free homes, right? There aren't many vacant homes across the city that people can afford. Again, this is sort of a redundant slide about some of the rezonings that have occurred. And then these are some of the more designy studies that we're doing right now that we're going to release publicly. So maybe they're helpful for local communities thinking about how to grow and develop and what kind of changes, public space amenities, connections they might want after the IBX comes in. And so we're looking specifically at all the station areas within the IBX. Here's Utrecht Avenue. Just sort of defining it and explaining to people what characteristics it has. Yeah, and I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate
Sorry,
it.
I know that's a lot of information.
No, please. We thrive in getting very detailed presentations. Makes sense to excite some people and get questions going. So I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to open it up for questions. I can already see a hand up, but folks, just raise your virtual hand and I will call on people. First, we will start with Liz.
Hi, thanks so much for this presentation. It's really good to hear about the need for more public and active transit. I think that's something that I hear a lot. And, it's great to hear the Cortelyou and Dorchester bike lanes called out as well. We've heard lots of support from that as it's been presented from DOT, from the community, as well as calls to, get more and have better connections. And so just, it's really good to see this in a comprehensive view. One thing that I was kind of curious about, just because we're kind of in the middle of this long snowstorm, and you're mentioning that you've been looking at how other cities do other things and so forth, if there's anything that like New York City can kind of learn from that, particularly thinking about accessibility for people who aren't in cars, and especially for folks who have mobility devices and so forth. I know that we have this complex system where we require people to shovel our sidewalks, property owners, and there's this like kind of ambiguous thing about what happens at crosswalks because you're supposed to go all the way to the crosswalk, but sometimes the street dumps the snow there. And I'm just curious if there's anything that you've encountered from this. I know it's something that hasn't really come up as much in the last few years because this is the first time we've had a large snowstorm and then a deep freeze that I can think of in the last 12 years or so. But I'm not a historical meteorologist. So just curious if there's anything you've encountered on that. Just thinking about, active transit spaces, like that is something that is I have noticed and heard from a lot of neighbors as being particularly difficult these past couple weeks.
Yeah, I know it's been really hard to get around, especially for, people with mobility issues or strollers or, anything. It's been really, really tough. I don't honestly know about the snow. I mean, I suspect London doesn't get that much snow. Barcelona probably not. But like there's places like Oslo in Norway that must get tons of snow. And I guarantee you they do a heck of a better job than we do of clearing it and making access better for people. Even just different types of like snow removal devices is something that I think is important to think about. Different sizes, different shapes. There's a lot of options for that. And it's much easier to like clear a park and a sidewalk if you have the right kind of equipment. So I don't really know like what the city is thinking about all of that right now, but I obviously it seems like they should be. And then the big difference I think in other places is just that the trash, like the snow is one thing, but the trash on the snow is like, that's just a lot. So, in a lot of other places, they containerize the trash on the streets, and a truck comes, and we started doing this in certain places in New York, but we still have a long, long way to go. The truck comes, it's in a container. You don't really ever see the trash. It's in a container. The truck comes with its big thing. It comes down, lifts it up, dumps it in, goes to the next place. So the trash isn't like being thrown on the snow piles. I mean, that stuff is just crazy. So we've been big advocates for containerizing trash and bringing that kind of modern approach to New York.
Thank you. I'm calling on Nina next.
Hi, thank you. I've been kind of following the whole IBX, gosh, quite a few years anyway. So it's always exciting to kind of hear and see how it's progressing. Regarding is what some of us have named Snowmageddon, or Snowcopolis. I mean, I've various names. I don't think we even have to go as far as Oslo to see practical solutions. Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, Montreal, Cleveland. There are a lot of places that get far more snow than we do, and they don't act as though they've never seen snow before in their lives. Every time
Yep.
it snows, and I find I've been living in New York for over 40 years, and it just continues to amaze me how dysfunctional the city gets. Yeah, I mean, there are places that have like smaller snow plows. They also pick up the snow and cart it to other places, and hopefully do that before people then are befuddled by whether to put out their trash because it's trash collection day, only to have it sit there for a week and a half or so,
Yeah.
as it accumulates, and all of these kinds of issues. And they definitely don't do much for the quality of life.
No, definitely not. Thanks. Yeah, I was sort of in Europe with my head, so I went to Oslo, but you're totally right. Plenty of good examples and much closer to home.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Alana, you have your hand raised.
Oh,
Alana.
can you hear me now?
Yep. Got you.
Okay, hi, my name is Elena. Thanks for the
All right.
presentation. I guess, yeah, on the topic of uh sanitation, yeah, our recycling has been out for a week now and is like it's still there. The the thing that I was wondering about is, you mentioned the accessory dwelling units, and with City of Yes, I think historic districts were exempt, or like not exempt. They were like, the CVS says that you can't have ADUs in historic districts, and actually a large swath of Ditmas Park was already historic district, and then another large swath just got designated or is in the process of being designated. So I kind of wonder, like, if that conversation might evolve, given that we're going to get this great new transit access with the IBX. Like, we already have great transit access. We're getting even better transit access. Like, this is a place where ADUs could provide housing for a lot of people who could use that transit. But right now, it's not allowed under City of Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I didn't realize the historic district had been expanded. And we should probably go back and make sure our maps are up to date too. So thank you for bringing that up. But look, we're big supporters of ADUs. Not only because more people need housing, but it provides a different type of housing that maybe a student or someone can't afford to live in an apartment. It's a different type of housing. It's generally much more affordable. And the other thing, I mean, especially for like a neighborhood like Ditmas Park, like a lot of people who have been living in those homes for a long time, they want to stay there, but it's hard to pay the bills on something like that. And it gives homeowners an ability to, have a source of income and be able to stay, or, bring family to live there, right? With more kind of spaces that are safe and inhabitable. And we know a lot of people are living in basement apartments already. They're living in substandard conditions, and so the more you make it legal and bring those places up to code, the safer it is for everyone overall. So yeah, we totally support ADU expansion, and we've been big advocates for it, and everywhere we work across the region. So that's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Elena. Shawn?
Thanks. Just a quick clarification. The application for the historic districts is still in process, and there was some discussion at the public hearings to still include ADUs in so that I forget when it's going to vote, but it was at the City Council land use hearing just last week. My question is more about process, Kate. I mean, the what the Regional Plan Association supports is one thing, but do you comment on how? And specifically, I'm always concerned about the process, including maximizing and optimizing local community public input in the process of developing any project. I'm just wondering if our PA comments on that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we are urban planners ourselves, so we feel very passionately about public and community input and community planning and visioning. Actually, when we did our own regional plan, we, got feedback from, probably hundreds of thousands of people if you count everything up. And we had a partnership with some community-based organizations across the entire metro area to bring in folks who were for communities that have been disadvantaged sort of traditionally in urban planning and hadn't been part of that process in the past. And we worked with Make the Road, Community Voices Heard, a number of organizations like that. And we went to them and got their input and insight. And actually, there's a couple recommendations in there that wouldn't be in there without their input. One was that long-term residents can vote in local elections. And there's a couple others like that. So totally agree. And I think, that's something, with the IBX that we're very aware of and that's why we're a little bit cautious we want the city to be involved. We want it to work for local communities. We want local communities to be part of the planning. And that's why we're doing station by station area approaches rather than just sort of acting like the whole corridor is one uniform place. So anyway, if you have any other ideas about how we can improve working with people, let me know. But we advise the city government and advise the state government all the time on these matters, and they're really trying to, I think, predictability, clear timelines, clear expectations of how your input will be used are really useful, because if you don't have those things, then it just leads to kind of a bad feeling on both sides.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? While people, Lisa, go ahead.
Hi there. Good evening, Kate. Thank you for the presentation. I know you touched on a little bit about the buses and how the transportation, you're looking to see how that can improve the frequency or the speed of the buses flowing through the corridors. You put up a map, but I couldn't quite see which one of those bus lines are the slowest. I know there were a number of them, but I'm wondering what plans you have or ideas you have to help improve the buses, in particular because we have express buses that are running now on designated bus lines. And then we have the local buses that are running on those same designated bus lines. The local buses, I'm not sure if they've taken some of the local buses off of the lines, but the people who are at these local bus stops have to wait a significantly longer time. Community Board 14 may have addressed this issue in the prior years that I'm not aware of, but I'm just curious to know because the issue is still present. What thoughts, ideas do you have to improve?
Thanks for that question.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question. It's a great one, and there's so much you can do. I mean, I don't know why we put up with like having the bus service that we have. Like, we should all just be rallying and crying out for better bus service because it serves so many more places in the city. And in particular, like Dimmons Park, there's a lot of bus lines that run through it, and even some that connect directly to parts of Manhattan, right? And so it's another option for people if they're not able to get down the subway stairs or whatever. So yeah, I mean, look, designated lanes, protected lanes for buses is really important. And there's some challenging discussions you have to have about what that means about your street in terms of parking and travel lanes and such. But there's trade-offs, and if you have better bus service and faster bus service, fewer people need to park or use their cars and on those particular routes. So that's number one. And service and frequency, and that's about pushing the MTA for more service, pushing the state for more funding for operations, making sure they have the bus drivers, making sure they have they know that your community wants better bus service. So there's really a sort of advocacy push, I think, is really important for that sort of stuff. And then, there's a lot of other things you can do in terms of traffic. This is kind of like the technical answer, like traffic signals and moving buses through traffic faster, giving them prioritization on streets, all that sort of stuff. I don't know if that answers your question. And I'm happy there's a lot more we have, but I don't want to go into, too much detail.
Of course. Thank you very much. I don't see, Lisa, I know your hand. You just asked a question. There you go. I don't see any other questions, but I do want to, so I'll just ask my own, and then maybe we'll go on to the next presenter. I was curious, and maybe I missed this in your presentation. So you guys came up with the initial idea to use the existing track for the IBX, or what's called the IBX now, for passenger rail. After I see, you've also, it looks like there's a bunch of, you guys are doing a bunch of studies and taking a look at all kinds of stuff. Are you guys also like advising on the current development of it? Or are you still kind of fully separated and advocating and or researching and publishing your findings and all that stuff, like in support of the project? Or like, are you involved in, like, are they hiring you guys as consultants almost to like advise them on it in some capacity or no?
No, we're not hired by them, which isn't great for our budget, but it's good for independence. We do. It would be a lot better if we had a lot of money from the MTA, but we don't. So we have a grant to do this particular work on the IBX from the New York Community Trust, which is a big foundation in New York, and I'm sure you've all heard of it. But we have been in consultation with the MTA to kind of advise them to the extent that we can. So, we're very, very committed to the project. We want it to be successful. So if things do come up that you see locally that you think, the MTA should focus on, that they're not, and we can be helpful, please do let us know. Because that's one, as an independent organization, I feel like that's one really important service we can provide.
Do you guys like send the stuff, like your research and findings? You said the report's going to be public. Do you actually send that to someone at the MTA too? I'm sure they'll find it public.
Yeah, we already showed it to them, and they they're like, that's not right, but they mostly liked it. Mostly they liked it. So, but we do, yeah, we'll probably send it to the full report to them before we release it, because we always like to give them an opportunity to comment before thing goes public. We usually do that a couple of days before we put something out. They have seen a draft of this particular one. But yeah, we talk to them a lot about sort of how we can help them improve their approach and improve their projects. So, again, use if it's helpful.
Okay, great. All right,
great.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands
Thank you.
Going up. Kate, appreciate you coming to speak with us and all the details and telling us more about your organization. Thank you very much for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I usually don't do community board meetings these days, but Dimmons Park is like my favorite neighborhood in all of New York. Don't tell the rest of New York. So I was happy to do it. I lived there for a long time, so.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay if you want to listen in, but you can also, feel free and have part of your night back.
I have to jump because I actually have to get my daughter. So this timing is perfect. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And hi, Brian. Nice to see you.
Good to see you
Great.
too.
Yep. I'll see you later. Bye,
All right.
y'all.
Thanks for
Thank you so much.
Thanks for making it work, Kate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was lovely to meet you all.
I'm going to
Bye.
transition over to my co-chair, Benjamin.
So our next speaker is going to be Brian Fritsch. So before I introduce you, I just want to say thank you for being flexible today and being patient.
Oh yeah, no problem at all.
So Brian is an associate director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. And hearing a lot about the MTA and updates relating to it. Floor is yours.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks so much to Sarah for the invite. Always happy to talk to community boards. I'm a Brooklyn resident as well, but in CB8, so just a bit further north of you guys. But my wife actually works in your district, so spend a lot of time at Brooklyn College and around where she is. So yeah, very excited to talk to you today. And I'll put my presentation on. We can take it from there. You guys able to see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Great. Well, I think interesting to go after my former employer, RPA. PCAC, unlike RPA, has a much more focused scope of work. We are essentially the MTA's in-house rider advocates. All our work is focused on the MTA's system, the 3 branches, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and New York City Transit, the subways and buses. Oh, that's my wife's Teams chat. Sorry about that. We are focused just on the MTA region and their services. We were founded originally by the MTA board and then codified into law by the New York State Legislature in the early 80s. Our sole mission is to work in tandem with the MTA to advise them on how to have rider needs top of mind in how they're delivering their service and their plans for capital programs, both the expansion of the system and keeping state of good repair good, and just operating the system on a day-to-day basis. As I sort of mentioned, we are organized by our 3 rider councils, one for Metro North, one for Long Island Railroad that your member Britt Bird is a member of, and one for transit. So the subways, buses, and Staten Island Rail are all included in that branch. The chairs of those, actually, I'll skip to this. So what do we think about? This is the list that we came up with of various MTA related initiatives that we care about. Essentially, it's everything that impacts the rider experience on a from a day-to-day basis to very long-term projects that shape how the system will look in the future. Yeah, and because we're a creature of the state legislature, we're intertwined with the MTA in kind of a unique way. I personally am an MTA employee to support the councils. The councils are all made up of volunteer members. The chairs of each of the councils right now sit on the MTA board in a non-voting capacity. They're able to voice rider concerns and ensure that riders have a seat at the table when major decisions are being made that it will impact them on a day-to-day basis. So what we do is we meet regularly with our 3 councils, discuss the issues of the day, and decide on our advocacy stances and things that we want to push for, whether that's pushing the MTA themselves, working with our elected officials to advocate outside of the MTA, whatever needs to happen in order to move rider-focused work forward. So I'm just going to highlight now just a few of the more specific things that we're working on at the moment that I think would be of interest to you guys. One of the major initiatives we've had for transit for I think the better part of a decade is the Fair Fares program. We were somewhat involved with helping to launch that nearly, I think, 9 years, or sorry, 7 or 8 years ago, and have been actively pushing for its expansion ever since. If you're not familiar with it, Fair Fares is half price subway and bus fares for New York City residents. The current eligibility level is 150% of the federal poverty limit, which is or less, which is just 23,000 and a half for an individual, just over 48,000 for a household of four. Obviously, the larger the household, the higher the number. We recently put out a report with our partners at Riders Alliance and the Community Service Society, advocating for the city to double the income level, to finally allow the program to include minimum wage workers and people just earning just above that amount, making it fully free for riders at the current rate, adding the city ticket, which is a lower price ticket if you're riding either Long Island Railroad or Metro North within the city limits, and express bus fares as half price options. And then, overall, just making the enrollment process easier. Right now, only about a third of eligible New Yorkers are enrolled in the program. There's approximately 1 million New Yorkers who could be on the program now, not just under that. And only about 30 around 35% of those residents are taking part in the program now. So we'd love to see that become much easier. This is something that we think we had some success with expansion under the previous mayoral administration, but we really hope that the Mondani administration will take this program and act on it in the current budget process that they're going through now. It's a reasonably priced proposal that we've made that we think would really impact riders' day-to-day life for the people who need it the most. So we're really excited about its prospects with the new mayor. Another thing that we're very involved with that I think impacts all of you anytime you take the subway and bus are the fare changes and the MTA switch to Omni. We've been engaged in that process for quite a while now, and have been critical of some of the technical issues that the program has had. Omni is far from perfect, although it has seems like it's gotten better over the past few months, which we're very pleased with. But more broadly, like when the MTA changes its fares, like they did right at the beginning of the year, increasing it to $3 for every subway bus ride if you pay full fare. We want to make sure that the structure and the fare policy is as friendly to riders as possible. And I think we were very engaged in the hearings, the public hearings that happened in August, to ensure that we were pushing back on the things that we thought were the most rider unfriendly. We had some success in getting them to be a little more flexible. Think there's a lot more that they could have done. And to that end, when they do things that we think are not as friendly to riders as it could be, we often work with state legislators to push them for changes that the MTA doesn't want to do themselves. And the ideas that we have for these come from our council members or other riders who reach out to us at meetings like this or others. So we take take any feedback we can get, and try to ensure that the MTA is acting on it. Just a couple other points on the Omni transition. I think you're probably aware at this point that MetroCard sales ended at the end of the year. They're still accepting the MetroCard if you have a card with leftover value on it now. At some point later this year, they will no longer be accepted. So if you have a bunch of them laying around, I encourage you to go cash them in at a customer service center and switch it over to Omni. At some point later this year, the cash on buses will also no longer be accepted. So that's another change that we're encouraging the MTA to get everyone ready for. I saw someone put in the chat already, talking about buses. You're right on reading my mind essentially. Brooklyn bus redesign is still in the works. It's something that will impact, I think, all of the bus routes that go through CB14. Queens completed their redesign in early September, and we're kind of anxiously now awaiting feedback to hear how things have been going. I will say, to the MTA's credit, I took part in this program. They did a good job of having bus ambassadors out there on the street talking to riders. I did a number of long shifts out there getting riders ready for the changes. Do encourage you to make sure you're aware of what changes are happening in the Brooklyn draft plan. Things have not changed dramatically. If you looked a year or two ago, I think things essentially the plan that's up now has been out for a couple of years now, and they're working on the final draft plan to be completed. There will be some opportunity for feedback once that's done before it's totally implemented. But if you do have comments, I would get them in now. Our hope with the redesign, as with all of these for Brooklyn, is in particular is to try to make a bus service faster and more reliable. That's the main goal here, and I think that fits in really well with what the mayoral administration is pushing for as well. So we hope that this will be a good opportunity for the city DOT to work together with MTA to really take bus service to the next level. Kate stole all my thunder on Interborough Express, so I really have nothing to add to what she's done. She already talked about. I will just note two things briefly. One thing that I think you guys as a community board should be concerned with, not concerned with, but aware of and engaged on, is how the new stations, when they're built, connect to the subway service that exists already. Thinking in particular about the station at Brooklyn College that connects to like the end of the 25. Whether or not that's going to be a direct underground, what we call an in-system transfer, or whether you'll have to exit the IBX, walk the block and a half out of system and then into the station. That's one thing that we're really interested to see what the MTA is up with in their environmental review process. And then just to give you a sense of the timeline, we expect the environmental review process, which started just a few months ago, to last approximately 2 years, maybe only 18 months if they're really quick, a little over 2 years if it's a little slower. And that will also give us a better sense of what the completion date will be. Only about half as Kate mentioned, only about half the funding is currently in. And then so the rest of the funding will need to come in the next capital plan, which starts in 2030. So I think the earliest the IBX will be up and running is sometime early in the 2030s, maybe 2032, 2033, if things are going quickly, and if it's slower, it could be like the middle of the next decade. So I think that's all I had, and I'm happy to pop my contact info at the chat, but I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Brian. We're now open to questions. Is there anybody that has a question now? Elena, you're up.
Thank you. I guess my question kind of ties back into the presentation that Kate gave, which said that there could be 5-minute frequencies on the IBX. Is there a sense yet of whether all of those trains will have like be staffed with like human operators and conductors, or whether that system might be autonomous?
It's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. That's one of the other key pieces of work the environmental review process will put together, and as they go through the planning. Light metro systems, light rail systems, like what they're proposing for the IBX. There are a number of examples of unstaffed models out there. So that's certainly a possibility. There's a lot of different ways that they could do this. They could, not have like if they don't need an operator for the train, they may still have a conductor. They could have two people on the train. I think they're all options. As far as I know, all options are on the table for how it will eventually look.
Thank you.
Carl?
Thank you so much, Benjamin. And Brian, thank you so much for the presentation. And so the question I have is about the sunsetting of the Metro cards and the cash, right? Like so two questions. So my first question for that one is, by any chance, have you heard of a projected timeline? Like you said, it's going to be later in the year. By any chance, do you know if they know if that's going to be towards like the summer, fall, or the winter of 2026, or they're not sure of that timeline yet?
I haven't heard specifics. The most all I've heard publicly the MTA say is that it won't be the first half of the year.
Okay.
So I think they're still figuring it out. And I will say for the people who do need to still use cash, there
I was going to
are
bring. Yep.
options to do that. Like we certainly don't want it to go away. That option for people we know plenty of people do not have credit cards and access to credit cards. So we certainly want cash options available. The one thing that is good, I guess, about the transition to Omni is there's a lot more retail establishments that do sell Omni cards now than used to sell Metro cards. And there's a fairly good website that shows where those locations are available, in addition to the regular machines and the stations, of which there are many fewer than there used to be for Metro cards. But they're with I think with a more robust retail network, we're in pretty good shape. There are still some holes. I wouldn't guess a ton in your community board district, but I I'll send over the map for you guys to take a look. And there is a way to nominate businesses for getting Omni card sales if they aren't doing it already.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, because I was thinking of that. I was just concerned, the numerous buses we have, just thinking of all the folks I've seen over the years who do use cash and the Metro cards and things like that. And so I was just thinking about those
Yeah.
populations. And anecdotally, the ones that I've seen, it's usually been like the elderly that I've usually been seeing,
Yeah.
like using the cash or the Metro cards, right? Whether it's the B8, 41, 103, whatever you want to call it. And so anything that you and the fellow writers can do to advocate for a really robust communication and support plan for these
Yeah.
folks, right? As you do that, I would definitely be grateful for that. And I know those writers would be as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we're going to go with Nina, and then we're going to go with Liz.
Hello, thank you, Brian. Very informative. I'm going to actually piggyback a little bit onto Carl's comments. One issue that I've run into in switching over to the Omni card has been that as somebody who gets senior fares, there are only certain places you can go to get a card that has then been, where you show your ID and they then process it so that it works on senior fares. And it's can really be frustrating. I lost a card. I had gone into the city and discovered that my card had slipped out of my pocket somewhere. And it was quite an ordeal getting home, getting a new card, etc. as a result of that. And I don't know, I think that the MTA needs to look at a way to either expand the accessibility, make it so that any token booth can, staff token booth can issue a new card or something. And the
Yeah.
site, by the way, on my phone, the app did not work. They were having issues as well. So it was just one thing after another.
Yeah, I mean, I hear your frustration, and certainly have, you're not alone in them. I've heard from a number of other riders, whether they're, fair fares riders or senior riders, with the transition. Um, I do think the customer service, which was really quite abysmal, ha, you know, uh, as recently as the summer when it was totally overwhelmed when the technical issues were coming. They have done an okay job of staffing that up. I know they recently just expanded the customer service to being open to 24 hours so that you can get someone on the line if you do have an issue. And they're also have expanded the number of customer service centers where you can deal with. Let me see if I can find that list, and I'll pop it in the chat, um, where you can deal with senior card issues and other Omni issues, as well as exchanging Metro cards for Omni cards. So, yeah, we're pushing them to put more resources into making this transition as easy and seamless as it possibly can be for riders. But definitely hear your frustration.
Well, that's good to hear, and thank you.
Liz?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for this presentation. I was curious if there was any more insight into possible fare structures for the IBX yet. I mean, I know you mentioned the city ticket, which hopefully would encompass this sort of, however, assuming that comes across. But just kind of curious if there had been more discussions about if this would be, I think it was mentioned it would be probably comparable to subway and buses, but
Yeah, I can't see a political environment where they could charge anything other than the regular fare for subways and buses. I just don't see that flying. It'd be too confusing, I think, for riders to add another fare structure, and figure out whether you could transfer for free or not. I fully expect the IBX to be the standard, right now $3 fare if you pay full fare, and allow transfers to from the IBX to other subway service and bus service. I mean, that's the whole point of the project is being that great crosstown connector. So we expect people to transfer on and off of that line an awful lot, to get where their final destination is. So if it's not that, they will be hearing from us, and I hope you will join us to make sure that they're doing the right thing on that. But I can't imagine a world in which it will be anything other than the full fare.
So before we go to Lisa, I just wanted to ask a question if portions of the IBX will be open before the entire line is complete. Is it going to be kind of like a full rollout or kind of staggered?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's too early to tell. I would be surprised if they did a staggered opening for it. There are a few tricky parts of there are some easier parts for the line. As the Brooklyn section in particular, up until you get to Broadway Junction is a much easier portion, than some of the tunneling that they have to do, like under All Saints Cemetery in Middle Village in Queens, and some of the other the other more comprehensive repairs. So I guess there might be a scenario in which they would open a portion early, but I certainly haven't heard any plans for that.
Thanks. Lisa?
Hey, Brian. You mentioned that there's still time to submit community feedback for the redesign, the bus network redesign for Brooklyn. Do you have a date on when that deadline is? And I just learned that our community board has a link with some information. Thank you, Shawn, and to the team. But members of the community board can also get this information out for those who are not coming to the community board's website. If there's still time, I'd like to get that time so we can share that.
I don't have a firm date for when they're totally finishing. I know that they're working on their final draft, and it's if you look at their website, they said that they would be done with it by the end of 2025, which didn't happen. So that's still in process, as far as I know. I don't have a firm deadline on that. I'd say that, with any of these things, the sooner you can get it in, the more likely it is to be incorporated. But there will be another opportunity when the final draft is done. It's a much shorter time frame. But if there are specific concerns, definitely pass it along to me, or there'll be other opportunities to weigh in, just more generally as well. I'll actually put my email in the chat just so anyone can grab it. I'd be more than happy to hear from any of you.
Shawn, you had your hands up?
Yeah, thanks. Brian, you actually kind of echoed a thought that I've had and have communicated to MTA a few times, that when you were talking about their customer service and then their need to pivot and improve it, I've been saying to some of my liaisons there, sometimes when I'm frustrated with a lack of response to station conditions and really their reticence to be efficient in working with DOT on programming Newkirk Plaza, that if they're not being responsive to the community and they're not maintaining the assets that are in our communities now, then they shouldn't be surprised if there's pushback and concern on the introduction of new assets. And so I'm hoping that resonates with them in terms of their responsiveness and maintenance of current assets. And then my question, any advocacy behind that idea in order to improve service and maintenance would be appreciated. But the question too is that, we hear about IBX, we're hearing about the bus redesign, we're hearing about, there's also truck route changes coming from DOT that's being reviewed, the bike network expansion, dedicated lanes, et cetera. How much how much effort is going into coordinating these projects so we're kind of doing a comprehensive mass transit plan instead of one-off plans? How often do they speak to each other?
That's a good question. I can't really speak to that, the level of detail. I know that MTA and DOT are in close conversation. But I do expect that the tenor of those conversations will change with the new administration, somewhat. I hope for the better, but I can't say for sure. But there's so much that needs to be coordinated between the two agencies. They do talk all the time. Whether or not they're always listening to each other, I think is really the question. But also really hear your concerns about station maintenance. It's something that comes up at our council meetings frequently, and we often, anytime you have specific concerns, feel free to send them my way, as well as to the MTAs directly.
Britt, did you have your hand up at one point?
I put my comment in the chat, so I'm good.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And Lena, you have your hand up, but I don't know if you have another question or that was from before.
It actually was from before, but I will take this opportunity to just ask if the PCAC has a position on autonomous transit versus staffed transit.
You know, we don't. We tend to stay out of labor issues. That's one area where we feel like is not our prerogative. I think ensuring that riders feel safe on the system is definitely something that we hear a lot about and actively advocate on. We've been supportive of like the governor's initiative to ensure that there are officers on the trains overnight. We think it's a worthwhile investment. But in terms of whether it's two-person operation or single-person operation or autonomous, the 42nd Street shuttle, for example, is an autonomous piece of MTA infrastructure. That's not something that we comment on. But as long as customers feel and are safe on the system, that's our priority.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So right before we go to Carl, I have two questions. I'll split them up. One question is, before we heard the previous presentation where she said that the light rail is going to be a smaller capacity, so it's going to be faster. Does the PCAC have any idea of how much smaller it is?
I haven't heard any specific details. I think it's a totally new mode of transportation for the MTA. So what exactly the rolling stock will look like is a question that I think is to be determined.
Gotcha. And my last question is, if somebody else wants to reach out to you, do you want them to use your email that you put in the chat, or is there a more centralized area that they can send it? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, I would prefer they send it just to our general inbox, and I'll put that in the chat as well. It's just mail@pcac.org. That's a mailbox that we, as a staff, we're a small but active staff of just 5, but we monitor that inbox regularly, and we'll get back to anyone who comes to us with concerns.
Thanks. Carl, you're up.
You're muted, Carl.
Thanks. I was my own villain muting myself. I apologize. And so, yeah, Brian, a quick ask, just in terms of importance, could you work with your fellow PCAC members and the MTA regarding translation services for the feedback form for the Brooklyn bus redesign? And so, you click it's in English, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's incorporating a translate button or having some resources where people could reach out to people who could interpret and then translate that stuff, that'd be great, just because you heard from a fellow board member about wanting to share it with our networks, right? So there's a lot of people who speak a ton of different languages and dialects, and so if you're able to work with your PCAC and MTA colleagues to get that form available in other languages and dialects and how to point people to being able to translate that and other things and submit that'd be wonderful, because you'd definitely be opening the doors to even more feedback to the bus network design and other stuff down the road as well too.
Thanks. Yeah, I know there are some translations on the website. I'm surprised that the form is not available in other languages as well.
It didn't seem like that when I clicked on it. Maybe I did something wrong,
Yeah.
but if you click on it, it just looks like it's just in English, and I didn't see an ability to,
Yeah, I got you. Let me take a look and see if that exists somewhere for you, and I'll email Sarah with that link if I can dig that up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yes, of course.
I don't see any other hands raised. So at this time, Brian, we really appreciate you coming down. Gave us a lot of updates, a lot of things to process, and hopefully we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Bigger and better
Great.
updates.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me. Please do reach out if you have, any thoughts, big or small, about the MTA system. Always happy to hear them. So really appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Brian. So at this time, we're going to introduce Britt Bird, who's a senior planner for the borough president. There is an event coming up on March 3rd, and let's hear about it.
Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks, everyone. I'll be brief. I don't have a presentation, but just want to share a very exciting thing and also piggyback on, I think, the two presentations tonight. So I'm our liaison from the borough president's office to CB14 resident, coming to you from Cortellia Road and Westminster right now, and just want to also mention that the borough president is similarly engaged on a lot of these issues, particularly the IBX. He's very engaged and has submitted scoping comments about the IBX that are available on our website that give a latest snapshot of some of his concerns and positions. And then to Shawn's question, about are these agencies talking to each other for all of these big coordinating visions? That is very much a motivating principle of the comprehensive plan that he put out, which I will be delivering a copy of one of these to Shawn on Monday at the meeting, as part of the borough president's ongoing invitation that to all the boards to make use of our office's resources as you may see fit to think through some of these problems. We have staff time and skills and capacity to think through questions about transit, housing, open space in places like CB14. And one of these conversations that I wanted to share is an event that we are hosting about low traffic neighborhoods, which is actually an idea that Kate mentioned briefly in her presentation. We are partnering with an organization called Open Plans to host a panel and discussion about low traffic neighborhoods in Brooklyn. I'm making a special effort to reach out to all transportation committees and transportation chairs across the borough, because I see this as a great way to really dive into each district's statement of needs and kind of think about how we can identify what the things the boards know we need in every district and think about them on a neighborhood sort of level. All of our streets are different across the borough, but one thing that they have in common is that they have different relationships to one another. There are residential streets, there are busy through streets, and they interact with and have intersections. So on March 3rd, we're having a panel that is bringing together some parent organizers at a school who have put together a proposal for a low traffic neighborhood around their children's school near McGolrick Park. It's bringing in some urban designers from WXY Studios, and we're hoping to have a conversation to really start thinking through about low traffic neighborhoods and how this could look in each different neighborhood in each board in Brooklyn. So I'm hoping to see it as the beginning of a conversation, not a one-off. And as a CB14 resident, I'm particularly interested in talking about these things beyond just March. I've shared a link in the chat, but I'll be sure to share flyers and more updates with Benjamin and Musa and the board as we go forward. But yeah, happy to ask or answer any questions now as well.
Thank you, Britt. I don't see any questions for now. So that's it. I'm going to say thank you very much for coming here and spending the time. I know you've been in the meeting listening to everything, so I appreciate that. And March 3rd is noted.
Great, thank you. And I'll see everyone at the general meeting as well.
All right, so our committee doesn't have anything else for tonight. So right on time, right before 8 o'clock, we'll be closing it out unless there's any other comment. All right, so let's make it
Community board
official. We're closing it
applications
out.
close tomorrow. If you haven't reapplied, make sure you get them in.
Good call, Brett.
Thank you.
Thanks for sounding the alarm, Britt. That's so true. Yeah, tomorrow's the last day.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care,
Thank you
everyone.
very
Good
much,
night.
folks. Have a good night.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night, folks.